She's also a he?
More. I like more.
Well, I'm bisexual, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
I go both ways.
Ilya likes both.
I am also bisexual.
Like full-on pterodactyl screaming. The sense of like this pure queer joy. Hello and welcome to Bisexual Breakdown, where we have breakdowns as we break down pop culture. I'm your host, Serena, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Katie.
Hello.
And today we are joined by our good friend, Snap.
Hi.
Talk about the queer media that has dominated our group chat for the last however many months and has completely taken over our lives and consumed us body and soul. We are, of course, talking about the gay hockey show from Canada that has since exploded into a global phenomenon, Heated Rivalry.
We should start out by saying that this has been like a very popular topic for, I want to say, almost every single podcast that covers media in general. I feel like you can't really scroll Instagram or anything without seeing a million podcasts talking about Heated Rivalry. It's like a very hot topic right now. We want to stay true to what we think our brand is as this podcast. Obviously, we want to go through every single episode and dissect every single moment that we love, which is what we've done with previous episodes. But because we feel like that has been done to death by pretty much everyone, instead we kind of want to focus on, I guess, like our experience of this phenomenon and our experience of the fandom. And we want to discuss just like the significance of this moment of time and pop culture in general, and how significant it is that this has become such a phenomenon, and like how people are reacting to it from without of the community, but also from like within the queer community. So that's kind of we were joking that was like the thesis statement of our episode. We want to talk about more of like the culture and the fandom kind of surrounding the show right now, rather than talking about the episodes themselves.
And the social impact to like audiences that you wouldn't think were the target audience of this show. Like everybody's watching the show now and everybody's got an opinion about it.
Yeah. Whether they're good opinions or bad opinions, they've got them.
Yeah. So many people have opinions.
Some truly wild opinions out there.
Some truly wild opinions out there. So I guess we wanted to start off by talking about our experience with this particular piece of media.
Maybe we should start with how each of us got into the show and or the book.
Absolutely. Why don't you go first, Serena? I feel like you were kind of...
I was the one who dragged the both of you into this.
Yeah, I was going to say, like patient zero in this situation.
Yeah, so I was aware of the Game Changers series. I've been aware of it for a few years, and it was just kind of one of those things that I meant to check out and I never got around to. But then around January last year, there was buzz about how it was going to be made into a TV show, and I thought, oh, okay, well, if it's going to be made into a show, I got to lock in, because I like to read things before I see the screen adaptation. But then it took me a while to start reading the books. I think I started reading it maybe June last year, and I think that's when I first mentioned it to you guys that, okay, so this is happening. I'm going to read it.
Wow, I don't remember it being that early. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the show aired in November, right? And then like the trailer aired in October. But by the time that the show had aired, we'd already read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure by the time.
Yeah, I was the last one, and I had finised the books before the show aired.
Yeah, you were kind of resistant to it. Because you're the one with the most history with hockey.
I'm a contrarian. That's my, sorry.
I just looked when I read it on my story graph, and apparently I read it firstly in 2 days, Heated Rivalry, and then I think maybe another, probably 1 day for the long game. on October 17th is when I finished it. So I started on the 15th of October. So I think that was maybe already when there was starting to be some buzz, like maybe when the actors got announced and maybe they had released the trailer, or maybe the trailer hadn't come out yet, but we knew who was going to be in it.
Yeah, I think they announced the casting around June.
Oh, okay. That early, you think? Okay, okay.
Oh yeah, the casting at least. Like I think that I remember because like people like online, they keep bringing up the post that was like originally announcing it and the headshots that they use for the two lead actors keep like going around. And I do believe that original post was, I think, from June.
Yeah, when that came out, people were, I don't know about this.
I know. I saw people talking about that. They weren't sure. They didn't really vibe with those like headshot photos.
Yeah, but then when they started releasing pics from the set, people were like, oh, okay, I see the vision. I think that maybe our initial reactions might have been wrong. And thank God they were.
As we kind of alluded to, you read the books and you were like sold, right? You were like, hell yeah, I'm fully in this, right?
I read all 6 books and the 2 standalones. I read
the hockey canon of Rachel Reed.
Yeah, I read all Rachel Reed's books, basically.
Yeah.
They're really easy to read. I think I finished Heated Rivalry in a day.
Yeah, I think I was similar. I think Serena had so much excitement and that kind of pulled me along. So I was like kind of less into it right at the beginning, but then I got super hyped once the trailer dropped and once the sneak peeks and stuff started dropping too. Because I think I read the first book. It took me a little while to get into the long game. I was maybe less of a fan of some of the other books. I mean, I still enjoyed them and they were still, like you said, Serena, like super fun, easy reads that I just ran through in like a day or two for all of them. I don't even remember when I finished the last one because I think I read 2 and 6, so the Heated Rivalry and the long game, and then I read the rest in order. So I ended with 5. And I think I probably finished that maybe the week before the show was going to drop or something. I don't know. It was pretty close. Let's see. Yeah, I finished it November 18th.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I remember, I think I took a pause between a few of them or, with the holidays and stuff. I was reading maybe a little slower, but.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed some books in that series more than others. And they're not necessarily like the best books I've ever read, but there's really something about Ilya and Shane specifically, like about that relationship and about those 2 characters that really got me. Just like seeing them from the perspective of the other characters in the series, which was my motivation to read all books that weren't necessarily focused on them.
Yeah, seeing them pop up in all the other stories was so fun.
Katie, maybe we should talk about like why you in particular were a little bit resistant on getting on this hype train.
Yeah, honestly, I think a big part of it for me, and we'll get into this more later in the episode, but I am Canadian. I've grown up in like a very hockey obsessed family, I would say. I've been going to hockey games since I was like a 5-year-old. I very much associate hockey with like family and like growing up in specifically the place that I live in Canada is just like so intensely like hockey obsessed. I cannot overstate how much of like our culture here is like ruled by hockey. Anyways, so for me, it's always been like a little weird. I know that even in the last several years, I feel like there's been an increase of just like fandom around like hockey. I kind of felt like hockey was a little bit ignored by before, like internationally. But I noticed in the last few years, there were specifically fandom popping up around hockey where it was like people who were partaking in fandom activities about hockey players, and that's fanfic and drawing and watching games and making fan edits and like all that stuff was all happening around hockey. And I always thought it was so weird because I think that I have always had such like rigid ideas in my head about how hockey is and how it's meant to be enjoyed and like how to be a hockey fan, which is a very old fashioned point of view, I guess I would say, of like that's how I grew up. That's just how my relationship to hockey has always been. So I guess I just have been very like resistant to consuming content that had to do with professional level hockey players. I get pretty intense about the realism of the hockey in the content. And I know that Rachel Reed is a hockey fan,
Yeah.
but even sometimes reading the book, I was like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? And so I was kind of like, I don't know. I felt like a little judgmental. I wasn't going to be able to like fully suspend my disbelief in
Yeah.
like consuming it. And I mean, I wasn't wrong because as like we've kind of alluded to, I wasn't a huge fan of the books. I mean, I didn't dislike them. I think I gave them both kind of average ratings. I liked The Long Game more than I like Heated Rivalry. So I think I maybe gave that one a slightly higher. I don't know. I feel like I maybe gave Heated Rivalry a 3 and The Long Game got like a 3.5 or a 4 maybe just a 3.5. I don't remember. But I definitely did enjoy it a little bit more. But I felt neutral. You know, I don't think there was a question about whether or not I was going to watch the show, but I guess I was sort of more like, well, I'll watch it because honestly, like Snap kind of said, the enthusiasm I think was a little like contagious. I was enjoying that you guys were both pretty excited about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe more than I was excited about it. I was just like, oh, this is like fun. They're like really excited about this. And also at one point, it was like a legitimate thing of, Katie, you're going to have to be our resource for watching this show.
because it was only streaming in Canada at the time.
Yeah. Exactly. So like for a long time, it was genuinely like, you're going to have to be the reason why we're able to watch this show. You have to stream this to us somehow. Until, of course, it got picked up by HBO. But yeah, for a long time, it was like, oh, I'm going to be like the source of this content for people.
Yeah. It's so funny because the fandom was melting down about it only being available in Canada. And, oh no, how are we going to watch this? And we're like, it's too bad for you. You don't have any Canadian friends.
Yeah. I was like, maybe you should make friends with some Canadians and then you wouldn't have to freak out about this.
Just so funny too, because I feel like our group starting in our home fandom, there are so many people that we know.
Yeah.
So we have so many points of access. I'm like, who are all these people that just don't know Canadians?
I know. They got to make more.
But no, it was really interesting, Katie, what you were saying about suspending the disbelief. I feel like, Serena, you've gotten more into hockey recently with the show and the books and everything, but I haven't gotten really into hockey.
Except you recognize team logos now, and you know who these hockey players are, so don't pretend you're not paying attention.
I do know things by osmosis because it crossed my timeline more than I would expect at this point. But I feel like I'm still a little bit removed from the culture. I guess part of this kind of sense of disbelief that we have to kind of suspend is also the actual culture around hockey, how it's like this very hyper masculine type of sport. I mean, like many professional men's sports, but I think especially hockey has that stereotype that there's like a lot of homophobia, sexism, like misogyny that's kind of baked into the players and the NHL, the commissioner. So I was wondering if that kind of impacted your view on like getting into kind of an MM romance version of it, because it's like, can I really go into something like that when I know how like the real world kind of works?
I'll just say it is a big suspension of disbelief. I feel like it's sort of similar to Red, White, and Royal Blue in that sense, because I think that they're both set in reality, but in realities that are gentler.
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice way of putting it.
Thank you. Because like in that story, you're meant to, I mean, like God, that like that's an even bigger suspension of disbelief now that the United States could have a woman as a, I almost said prime minister, a woman as a president, and also not be basically the garbage fire that it is now. And that's a huge suspension of disbelief, I guess, along the same lines as this. And that was something that I kind of had to get over, especially like in the second one where the whole Centaurs team is so like accepting and like basically all of them are like.
That only exists in the PWHL.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's canon, but only in women.
Yeah, exactly. So it is a big suspension of disbelief. And I mean, it's not completely glossed over in the books. I wouldn't say it's a pretty big concern of Shane, especially in the second one. That's going to be his like career ender. And it does end up being pretty bad for him. Like he
Yeah.
ends up getting pretty like isolated from his team to the point that he feels like he needs to leave. It's not like a complete out to lunch
Yeah, it's not
view of
ignored by
it.
Rachel.
No, but I would say that's why I think the word more gentle or gentler is like appropriate, because
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite as harsh as maybe like reality would be, but it's also not like completely ignoring.
The difficulties that a player would face in that particular situation is there is attention paid to like how hard that might be for an individual person.
Should we talk about our experience with this media, like what resonates with us about this book?
Oh gosh. Okay. To be honest, I'm not sure what it is. I think that I've always liked reading stories, and we've talked about this before, like why they appeal to us, queer and non-binary folk and queer women. But I feel like there's something specifically about this world that Rachel created, which seems very apt for the moment. There is this inescapable kind of tension between the two main characters. There's, of course, the overshadowing, like, larger world, whether it is a gentler one or not. The writing isn't like the most amazing writing I've ever read, but there are some specific lines that she has that every time I read them and I go back to the books, I'm just like floored by them. And the characters of Ilya and Shane are just individually so special to me. I think this is one of the first pieces of romance media that I feel almost equally connected to both characters. I almost always have a favorite and a couple like or just connect more with one character or the other, even if I really enjoy both characters. And for some reason here, I just really love both of them. Like I will die hard for both of them. It's like protect Ilya and protect Shane. I don't know what it is about her characterization. I think I specifically relate to a lot of Shane's, I guess, neuroticism and like hyper perfectionism and being from an Asian immigrant family. I kind of get a lot of the pressures that he faces and kind of understand a lot of, some of the things that he thinks about internally about always striving to be the best and not wanting your identity to be the only thing that defines you. And then Ilya also has this kind of perceptiveness that I really relate to. I feel like that's something that I share with him about just being able to read people really well, but maybe not necessarily knowing what to do with that information. And then, of course, he's just a hysterical, hilarious character, which I love. He's just always inserting himself into every situation. And it's just so joyful to see him in every scene. And then he does also have this deep sadness, I feel, with his family and his upbringing and everything, which is just lovely to read. Someone who's like outwardly playful and maybe a bit of an asshole and things like that, but have such a emotional kind of center that's only shown to a few people.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for me too. There's something about the way those two characters are written that are so compelling and the dynamic between the two of them because they're two of the best hockey players in the world. And it's like there's no one better than them. The only person who can beat them is the other. And so there is that they're the best at their sport and they're equal in almost every way. And I think that foundation of equality makes for a really compelling like push and pull of that relationship. And I think that's what resonates with me and with a lot of people because that is not something that you often see in a relationship. There's always some kind of power imbalance, especially if you are a woman in a relationship with a man. There is that inherent power imbalance. And it's so refreshing to see two people work out complicated feelings for each other on an equal level.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Serena. And even in MM stories, I feel like there's often one character who is more, I'm not even saying in a sexual way, but like more dominant and submissive in terms of just,
Or like female coded.
yeah. And I feel like even though there is a little bit of that with their dynamic, it because they're so equal in terms of their skill in their sport, they're like at the top of their game. And it's not one person is always beating out the other, like
Right.
barely or anything. They're literally always trading wins.
I don't know. I guess I feel a little more like complicated about it again because I wasn't like a huge fan of the books.
Eh.
Because like when I read the books, I was just like fully, oh my God, I'm going to get crucified for this. I really hope that people can understand this. When I read the books, I was like fully team Ilya. That sounds shitty because I know it's like there's not like a team. They're like, I guess they are against each other, but I don't want this to be like a weird team Shane, team Ilya. That's dumb. But I like liked Ilya so much. Like the perceptive thing, I very much relate to. I feel like I'm like very good at reading people. I feel I use like humor and being a bit of an asshole to push down my emotions sometimes. I very much like feel that in Ilya. And so I feel those were things that I understood. It took me a little longer to come around to Shane. And I have to admit, I really didn't fully love him or enjoy him as a character until the TV show. And yeah, I guess I have to credit that to both Jacob Tierney, the writer and creator, as well as Hudson, who portrayed him in the show, because I think they did such important work in developing him as a character. I don't really want this to turn into a criticism of the book or anything, but I do feel like the books left a lot to be desired with regards to him as a character.
I think that's fair. And I think that things that are implied in the book, like Shane's perfectionism and the pressure of being half Asian in a very white league and like his undiagnosed autism, that's there in the books, but it's not really made explicit. I don't think it necessarily has to, but there wasn't really much attention paid to it. And I think that for me and Snap, maybe it's because we're Asian and there are things that we are reading into it just because we know what that's like. It's not necessarily there, but it's okay. You know that this character is Asian and you're able to just transpose a lot of your own experiences into him. And so it makes him more, you're projecting. And so he automatically becomes more sympathetic, even though there's not much in the text to necessarily make you feel that way. You're just like projecting your own feelings about your own Asianness onto him, which is, I guess, what I did.
And also about autism thing, I don't have autism. I've known people who do have autism. And to me, it like almost doesn't come through in the book at all. Like I really didn't see it until it was on the screen. And then I heard someone mention it and I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, of course, that makes so much sense. Like seeing how he acts and everything like that. And the portrayal of it in the show is just like honestly really good and makes him feel like a more like real character. And there's been some like discussion about the flat affect in the show. But I don't know, it makes sense for him as a character to me now. Like I can't really picture it any other way.
I agree. I think Hudson's performance was just like really masterful and in every way captured all the aspects put into the book, but also made it much more than what was written on the page. I agree with you, Katie, and what you're saying, Serena. I felt like Shane's Asianness or like the fact that he was Asian was like a throwaway line in the book.
Because we don't really get into anything about, not even a hint of what he might have experienced as an Asian biracial person. And so you're just projecting that, like you're just assuming what it might have been like, but it's not there in the book at all.
Exactly. There's like the one line that the reporter says that's also in the show about, do you feel similar to Tiger Woods and Serena Williams? And Shane is, I don't think about that kind of stuff. But there's so much more in the show with Yuna, with Shane's mom.
The conversation that he has with Rose.
Yeah. I was going to ask you guys, is that conversation in the book?
It's not.
Because I think, and then this is like a pretty common complaint. I don't know, because I've seen people complain also, and also say this is like a very real experience of theirs as like someone who is biracial or like half Asian, but they have a very white sounding name, which like you hear the name Shane Hollander and you're not going to be like, that's an Asian person. And I will say that like being a TV show and a TV show being like a very visual medium, it is a little easier for them because you can't hide the fact that Hudson looks Asian. And I think that maybe also just, it's like easier in the show for it to not be hidden. Because in the book, you're just seeing the name Shane and you're like, that could be anybody. Like,
right.
The name Shane could be anyone.
I think that conversation that he has with Rose is so important because also I'm pretty sure Hudson mentioned it in an interview about himself even, saying the fact that he's half Korean, but he has a white last name. He can really relate to Shane that way, where on paper, maybe he's like this, that maybe doesn't come off as being half Asian, but then when he shows up in the room, you're like, oh, I'm presented with someone different. But yeah, there were so many allusions to it in the show. Even though one of the very first conversations we see happen on screen when who is it? It's either the owner of the Voyagers or
probably the general manager or whatever.
Yeah, talking to Shane's mom and says some like weirdly microaggression comment.
Yeah.
But, like,
oh, we're so happy that he's Asian and Canadian.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, it's obviously trying to be an ally, but just a little bit weird. So I feel like in the show, Jacob really tried to make an effort to make it more part of Shane's character, which I really enjoyed. And Hudson also.
Yeah. Especially as Asians, your proximity to whiteness, like you can be half Asian or Asian, but your experience is not necessarily the same as other Asians moving through the world. And every little bit of privilege and like how close you are to whiteness does change that experience. And it was so important to me for that to be made explicit, even in that like little exchange that he had with Rose. Because I know where I'm from, like colorism is such a huge thing. If you have more Eurocentric features, if your skin tone is lighter, that gives you such a huge advantage over other people. What your name sounds like, if it sounds more European versus more like ethnic, like that changes the way that you move through the world. It was such a good insight, even though they didn't really dwell on it, but to even mention it was great.
Right.
Let's talk about, this has been like a very hot topic. I feel like the actors have been asked this in, I don't know, probably 80% of the interviews that they've done, which is that the show and the books, I think even more so, have such a large audience of women. I'd be curious what exactly like the numbers are. But to me, when I look at a lot of the fandom that I see online, it seems to be a lot of queer women. I know that we all have like pretty strong opinions on, I would say, like the devaluing of interests that women have by mainstream media, I think has been like such a big theme in what we've been experiencing as this show has gotten like so popular. So yeah, I just wanted to know, I wanted to talk about our opinions on what that has been like.
I think it's almost like every day now that I see some kind of headline from mainstream media that's, oh, why are women so into the gay hockey show? And it's like the tone that a lot of people use when they ask that question seems to be so loaded with judgment and kind of implying that there is something wrong or dirty about this thing that straight women are crazy about. And first of all, there's lots of different kinds of women who enjoy this show and these books, and to just label it as straight women feels like it's misogyny, but it's also like queer erasure, because I literally don't know any straight women who are fans of this show.
I don't know any straight women. Sorry.
Maybe that's because I exist exclusively in queer spaces now. I don't know. And maybe my algorithm is just showing me things that I that it thinks are relevant to me. I'm not that particularly interested in the things that straight women necessarily are interested in. So maybe it's just self-selecting. But
And I do think that there are like straight women into the show for sure. It's almost sort of something that's gained more traction, like with straight women. And also, I feel like they don't like when I say they, I don't know, people who run like big media corporations and stuff like that, the people who like decide what gets written and what gets put on TV and all of that kind of stuff. I don't think they can wrap their minds around the fact that queer people, but specifically queer women, could even possibly be a target audience. And so, like,
Right.
oftentimes, like, the discussion around, like, as much as, like, women in general are devalued as a market, I would say even more so queer women, they're just, like, literally not even
we're not even visible.
No, they're not visible. They're not part of the conversation. It's not, like, something that anyone would ever even consider, "Oh, there's, like, a market there." Or they like this kind of stuff. Like, I don't even think that anyone doing any of that sort of market research probably doesn't even think about that kind of stuff. But I do wanna say that actually it's been really nice. I think I mentioned the actors have been asked about it a lot, and I think that they've been actually really good about recognizing that and being like, "No, actually, there are a lot of queer women who can really relate to this genre," because I think that, and maybe the reason that women are so good at doing this is because I say us as women because that's how I've been viewed most of my life. But anyways, is that we have gotten so good at recognizing parts of other people that are familiar to ourselves, even though the entire person doesn't look like us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because so much of the content that we have consumed has been about straight people and probably about men.
Yeah. It's not made for us.
No. And so as a queer women, we've gotten so used to looking at straight male characters and like picking out the pieces of it that look like us. And so I think that is especially true. I mean, consuming content about two men even who are gay or bisexual or one of each, it's even closer and you're even more likely to be able to pick out something about those two characters that you can relate with. And it just feels like maybe that's something that men have not had to do throughout their entire lives. Because they're
Right.
just so used to being like, oh, everything is made for me. I'm a man and everything is made for me, especially straight men.
Yeah. And I think it was Connor during the Montreal or the Toronto premiere who said that specifically what he thinks that resonate with queer women is the feeling that you don't fit into a specific box, that society expects you to be a certain way. And that box just doesn't fit who you are. And that's something about their characters that queer women can relate to. And that was so true. And I felt so seen when he mentioned that.
One of the other things that Connor mentioned, or Hudson, I think both of them have said it at various points,
Yeah.
was this idea that, you know, of seeing an romance on screen, there's a sense of safety that we don't experience in a het romance because of kind of the implied power dynamic of a man and a woman. And I have personally always felt that way in terms of it's actually quite difficult now for me to consume heterosexual romance in any form, whether
Oh my
Same.
that's
God, I
book.
literally can't do
Yes.
it.
I
Literally
can't.
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. It's just because there's always this, even if you know the story is just going to be fluffy and fun, there's just always this niggling kind of fear in the background. There's someone who is bigger and stronger, and there's this just implied violence that could happen at any moment, I guess, in a straight relationship. And not to say that all straight relationships are inherently violent. That's, of course, not true.
I think that relates to what I was saying earlier about like the equality between the two characters being so
Yes.
compelling, that because that is so hard to achieve in a straight relationship.
And I think just having not to even be able to fully put yourself in one character, I think one of Connor or Hudson had mentioned this too, that in a straight romance, you're almost forced as a woman or even a queer person, maybe, to relate more to the female character because that's like how society sees you. And so you're like put into the box of the female character, experiencing everything through their eyes. And now, when there's two men, you can see pieces of yourself, like Katie was saying, in both of the characters. And you can also just be fully removed from the story. Like you can be an observer experiencing this without having your personal feelings affected.
And one thing, since we're talking about like stuff that they've mentioned in interviews, one thing that I think about a lot that also was like really true and that I feel like is very just what I mentioned about queer women not even being part of the conversation is that like they keep getting asked this and it's always, why do you think women like this so much? And in one of the interviews, Hudson said, there's all different kinds of women. There's like
This is why we
lesbians,
love
there's
them so much.
there's
Yeah.
lesbians, there's trans women, there's queer women, there's a bunch of different women who all have different life experiences. And how are you going to make a broad statement of women like this because of this reason? How are you
Exactly.
going to make a blanket statement of women like it because of this? It's like, no, there's a bunch of different kinds of women and they're probably all going to get something different out of it. So I do appreciate that nuance from them. I don't know. It's like not an easy question to answer and they've had to answer it like multiple times.
And it's so interesting that we never hear this question asked about Star Wars or Game of Thrones. Why do so many men like this show? We never have this conversation.
That kind of leads me into the next point because you mentioned like Game of Thrones and like that kind of thing. And it just reminds me of the fact that to me, fandom has always been run by women.
Yes.
So something like Game of Thrones is like a pretty big like fandom thing. And I don't know, it does feel like it maybe is mostly or like a lot of men are probably into Game of Thrones. But I just like honestly wonder how much that show and that like fandom has been propped up by women. Because honestly, I feel like as we've discussed like many times or have already alluded to, which is that because women in general are like devalued and their interests and desires aren't really taken into account. They haven't been like marketed to, even though, like I said, like they've been the backbone of pretty much every single fandom since fandom started being a thing.
Yeah. Since Star Trek days.
Since Star Trek days.
That
That
was
was like
my
the
first
OG.
fandom, Star Trek.
And they've always been drivers of what's popular. I think that's like a weird topic of conversation around Heated Rivalry is like, this is for women. And it's for women because women are the ones who consume content. Women are the ones
Who read books.
who read books and are like deciding behind the scenes, basically, like, what gets popular. Like
Yeah.
Star Trek is popular because of women.
Star Trek would have been taken off the air if it was not for women in fandom mobilizing people to get the studio to renew the show. Like it was women who was driving that movement.
And like the same thing with, I mean, at one point the Beatles were seen as like a frivolous boy band for girls. And now they're like historically regarded as like the most popular band in history. And they're taken like so seriously. And there's a large group of like old men who like take the Beatles so seriously. And it's at one point it was for girls. People thought that the Beatles were for girls. And it's just like that level of being able to be so like unapologetically into something seems to be like a unique experience to like fandom culture. And fandom culture is built for me on the backs of like women. And also queer women are built into that because I personally believe that the majority of fandom and shipping and fanfic and all that stuff is because of queer women's desire to feel like represented.
Yeah.
And to bring representation to something that didn't have it. That was like the foundation of like fandom and fanfic and all of that to me. So
we weren't seeing ourselves in media, and so we decided to create media that reflected us.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of like fan activity, fan works come from.
Yeah, or we didn't feel safe consuming the stories that were out there, and we created these other stories that were joyful and safe and in a different way. We've had this discussion a lot, like that queer people and queer women and women in general are the backbone of fandom. But it's really interesting too because there's a whole other genre of fans, like sports fans or fans of things that are seen as more traditionally male, like video games or Star Wars or things like that, which are, I don't know, there's this different lens. Like for some reason, sports fans are not considered fandom, even though the men that are participating in that kind of fandom have the same, I would say, level of fervor.
Fantasy football isn't thought of as fan fiction.
Right. But it is, right? But somehow that is okay and that is acceptable. But the types of fandom that we participate in are weird and gross and unacceptable. Yeah, so I think that's also part of where this whole discussion is coming from, that angle, this discussion about, ew, like why are women or why are queer people so into this show? That's gross because they're just watching it because there's two hot guys fucking on screen, like they're fetishizing gay men, and it's seen as this kind of dirty thing, whereas other types of fan culture are celebrated and not given the same level of scrutiny and not given the same level of disgust either.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more male adjacent it is, the more legitimate it is.
Correct.
Yeah. Which, as we all know, has been a very common, I would say, criticism of Heated Rivalry, which is that the whole fandom is just like straight women fetishizing gay men. Which, like, I don't want to completely be like, that's not true. Because honestly, like, that probably is going on. I'm not going to pretend that it's not.
Yeah.
I'm sure that is it. But it honestly feels like one of those things where it's like, once you create something like this and put it out into the public, can't control the reactions and the way that people are going to consume the content.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that I don't believe that is representative of even like 90% of the people who are consuming it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fair to be like, oh, it's just this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like that probably is happening, sure, because the amount of people who are watching this show, like statistically, I'm just assuming that some of the people watching it probably are watching it just because they're like, oh my God, I like to watch two guys, hot guys that make out. Whatever.
There's so much more to it than that.
Yeah. Like, I don't know anyone who is literally just watching this because they're like, oh, I want to see two hot guys make out.
Yeah. If people just wanted porn, there is a lot of that out there. Can we just talk about that though for a second? Can we interrogate the it's just sex allegation? Because this is so confusing to me because yes, there is sex in the show, but there's not significantly more of it, or it's not more explicit than what you would see on any other show, right? So like, why is that a criticism lobbed at this show in particular? It doesn't even have the casual full frontal male nudity that a lot of other shows do. So why is it that when people talk about it, they talk about it like it's no different from watching porn?
Yeah, it's actually very frustrating to me, and I get really fired up about it as we have previously discussed. I have so many friends, some of who are queer as well, some of who are straight, who watch the show and dismiss it as like gay porn or make jokes about how they had to watch it but cover their eyes the whole time, or they were worried that neighbors would be looking through their windows.
Oh,
Just
my
like
Lord.
stupid ass comments. And I'm like, okay, I get it if you're making a joke, whatever, like it's a horny show. But so is Bridgerton, and you never had any problem watching that. So is Game of Thrones.
And like the sex on Game of Thrones is so much more exploitative and violent.
And violent. Yeah, sorry that we're watching like loving, tender, like sex scenes. And you and who loved Game of Thrones were watching these like people get abused while they were having sex on screen. It's just so I don't understand this criticism at all.
Is it because it's gay and therefore
Of course it is. Yeah. It's more explicit because it's gay. It's got an R rating because it's gay. And just I think that people, if they really gave the show a chance and first of all fully watched it to the end, they would see that there's like a lot that's in the show that's not sex. But number two, like even if you watch first two episodes, which are the ones that get criticized the most for having so much sex in them, if you are watching with your actual eyeballs,
Yeah.
would understand the critical media lens, like media literacy, like you would
Yeah.
understand how much is happening in the moments between when they're having sex
And
while
while they're having sex. Yeah.
yeah, there's so much emotion, there's so much story that's happening during the sex scenes that
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, this is just porn." No, it's not. What the fuck do you think you're watching right now? Are
Yeah.
Have you seen porn before is the real question I want to
Oh,
ask.
yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe they haven't. And so they don't know how to think about this and they don't know how to see how it's different because those sex scenes are essential to the story. Each one is different and tells us something different about the characters. They tell us about who these characters are, where they are at this particular point in their lives, how those two characters communicate. And over time, we see how that relationship dynamic is changing through the kind of sex that they're having. So if you were just like, skipping those sex scenes or just, oh, they're fucking and you look away or you roll your eyes, then you're missing so much of that story unfolding.
I will also say I feel like this whole like discourse has just been disproven already because the last two episodes of the season have been by and far the most popular and the most highest like rated episodes. And episode 6 does have a few scenes that are a little like sexy, but episode 5 has nothing.
Doesn't have it all,
like
yeah.
quite literally nothing. It fades to black any single time anything is about to happen, or you just see them like in bed together after whatever has happened. And that's like the most popular episode. And so I just don't think that is like a valuable critique or even like a realistic one anymore. I think it's just been disproven. If people were being genuine in that critique and like actually paying attention to what was going on, then I don't think they'd be making it. So I feel like that critique is from people who aren't really actually that invested in the show or in people's enjoyment of it. And I will say what hurts the most about that comment and critique is when it comes from people in the community. You get like queer people of whatever kind or flavor of queer saying that. And it's like really upsetting. And I think that there's been like a lot of discourse about whether or not the show is like a good representation of like gay people or queer people. And I think that, I don't know, there's like a lot to be said for like how much people in the queer community demand like perfection from their media. And I don't think I know because I just watched this interview a day ago, but there's like just one interview where Connor says, actually, maybe he said it multiple times, but one I watched in particular recently when he talks about how the specificity in storytelling is a good thing. Actually, and Hudson has talked about this before too, about how he tried to portray Shane as just who he is, and you can't get bogged down or can't get caught up in being like, I need this character or this story to be like a perfect representation of the entire like spectrum of like queerness, because Shane is a very particular person and Ilya is a very particular person. And like you can really only show their experience of queerness, and you can't be like, oh, this is a representation of people who are very deep in like the queer community who live in like San Francisco and every single one of their friends is like gay and
Right.
whatever. And they're like at the gay club every single night. And that's just not their experience. And it's not the experience of every single queer person. And I think that is something that really is a weird sticking point in the community where people really, they want to see their exact representation
Mhm.
on screen. And it comes back to, again, because that criticism often comes from men being like, this isn't my experience as a gay man. And it's maybe you need to learn to look for the parts of it that are representative of you. And I think that's something that women are better at doing because it's something
Yeah.
that they've had to do more of.
Yeah. I think it's also maybe it's not about you and it's not for you, and that's okay. You don't have to be angry about that because it is
Yeah.
for someone else, and we should celebrate that. And instead of demanding that every story be about you and your experience, we can ask for more stories that tell the diversity of experience within the community. Like it's such an unreasonable ask to me.
And shouldn't we be celebrating every new perspective of the queer experience that comes into the mainstream media?
Yeah.
I don't understand this kind of reluctance of other queer people to prop this show up because they're like, oh, it's just like sometimes I hear from people who are like women loving women, like that, oh, it's just too much men, or oh, from other gay men, like how this is not my specific experience, like you guys are saying. Shouldn't we be happy that, firstly, a story that's even tangentially related to our community is being made, but also one that's being made with such care.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's like a difference. Being critical of something that's not good is like understandable.
Yeah.
It's oh, like at least we're getting something. It's no, it's you don't have to celebrate things that are bad just because we're getting something, but it's like something that's like legitimately good and being well received and has been made with so much love and care and is being
Mhm.
appreciated by so many people. It's like, why do you need to look for the negative in that?
Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing that you said, Katie, about like demanding perfection, there's so many details about the way that the characters interact, the way that they portray sex on screen that is like so much more than what we've seen in the past. And
Yeah.
also portrayed in such a different light. Whereas like gay sex a lot of times in shows is seen as a hush thing, like very dirty, very fast, like in a club, like with
Yeah.
drugs.
And not with the kind of tenderness often like that is shown in the show, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and which that is in itself a experience that is real to the community. This is a different kind of side of the coin, and it's being shown, like you're saying, with so much tenderness and care and like love and attention to detail in terms of positions and prep and all of those kind of
Yeah.
things that, I think Jacob put a lot of effort into showing on screen without making it like a documentary of this is how you have gay sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the portrayal of consent is something that
Yeah,
everyone can admire and aspire to.
I'm glad you brought up Jacob because I do feel like that criticism even is like almost a direct criticism of Jacob because as a gay man who is like the creator and writer of the show, to have been like to have those criticisms of the sex specifically in the show feels like a criticism of him because what do you mean a gay man isn't creating accurate portrayals of gay sex? If a gay man isn't doing it, who's gonna do it? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I'm like, he's the one who's created this and who has been helped by obviously like the intimacy coordinator to block this out, but he had a very integral part in creating these sex scenes. And so if he isn't creating an accurate gay sex scene, like literally who is gonna do it?
exactly.
What do you want?
Right. And I think part of that criticism comes from people saying, oh, Rachel is a quote unquote straight
Yeah.
woman and she's written this gay hockey book, which we don't know how she identifies. There have been like comments made that she potentially is queer herself. But regardless of that, like the person that is shooting the show and creating the show is Jacob, and he
Yeah.
clearly has part of his own gay experience. I remember specifically in one of the interviews that he gave, he mentioned saying like to the actors, I don't care what experience you've had in the past. I'm just telling you from my perspective as a gay man. Like, this is how it feels to be penetrated for the first time. This is how this feels. This is how you would do this. Clearly, the level of like attention to detail and care that they put into this show is just like astronomical and way more than we've seen before. And obviously, also standing on the shoulders of shows and media that have come before it. I don't see why this is something that people are not celebrating.
I know why, or I have a theory as to why. I've mentioned this before, but I think that it boils down to jealousy, because why was it this show? Why is it this book by that straight woman that got the 5-star TV treatment? Like, why can't we have this for lesbians? Why can't we have this for people of different ethnicities and races, or for people with different body types? And then it ties into the criticism of the actors and the demand that they make it publicly known how they identify. Like, why did those straight guys get those breakout roles? Because they went from complete unknowns to like superstars. And I think there is a bit of jealousy in that. It's why did they get those opportunities?
Yeah, I think especially like I mentioned this to you before, but I've seen some pretty like popular gay men creators on, I don't know, they're probably TikTokers, but I try to stay off TikTok. So I mostly see the Instagram reels of theirs that they cross post. But yeah, it's some pretty popular big name like creators who I know are like trying to make it in the entertainment industry. And they've been, I don't know if highly critical is the correct term, but like very dismissive of it. And it is hard to see it as something other than jealousy, just because it's why would you be so dismissive of it? This is like a difficult topic because personally, I'm not trying to say that I think that every single person should like this show. Every single gay man should like this show. That's not what I think. But I do think that some people aren't even giving it the full opportunity to appeal. I think an actual good example of this is Katya from Trixie and Katya. But like at first, the first time I heard Katya bring it up, she was pretty critical of it. And I was like, oh, that's disappointing, because I actually really like Katya and I like her opinions on movies. And I think she's really funny. And so like when I first heard her talk about it, she was like dismissive. And I was like, that's disappointing, because I don't know. I just don't think that this is something that deserves dismissal in that way. Now that she's engaged a little bit more with the content and has watched the rest of the episodes, she's done like a full 180 on it and is now much more appreciative of it, and has talked about like how beautiful it is and how good like the love story is. And like obviously, well, Katya's whole like personality is that she's Russian. And so she's talked a lot about Connor's like Russian and the accent and stuff like that. And I'm just like so happy that she
gave it a chance.
Yeah, she gave it a chance and she didn't just dismiss it outright and be like, oh, whatever. And I also think that, again, talking about this as like a discourse of, I've seen people be like, oh, the acting's not good, the rating's not good. I'm sorry, I don't accept that as a real criticism. To me, that's not real. If I see someone who says that, I'm automatically like, okay, you did not engage with this with a pure heart.
In good faith. Like, this is the highest rated IMDb episode.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If it was lower rated or like less whatever, I could be like, okay, fine. Like, you didn't like the writing, you didn't like the acting. But these episodes have been like the highest rated episodes in 2025. Some of them are like, I think the
all time
5 is like the second most highest rated episode
after Breaking Bad.
It tied it.
It tied with Breaking Bad. Yep.
It did. Yeah. And now it's like, you're going to try to come to me and say that you think that the acting and the writing is bad. Let's get real. Please be serious.
No, absolutely. And like to the experience that you were sharing with Katya, I feel, and I'm so glad that she did give it a chance and change her mind about it. And again, I agree with you completely that not everyone has to like this. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But one of our other friends, Maddie, was bringing this up to me the other day, saying that she really hates when people just make their minds up or say opinions about media that they've absorbed from other people or just trying to be a contrarian or whatever without
Yeah.
actually watching the media or reading the book for themselves. There's
Yeah.
been so many people, so many of my own friends who have been like, oh, I heard that the acting is really bad, or I heard that it's not an accurate portrayal of gay sex, or I heard that the first couple episodes are bad, but the last episodes are good. Like, why are you just repeating talking points? Do your own fucking research and watch the show and then give me your opinion, or just don't say anything. Like, it's just this thing where like people feel the need to comment on pieces of media that they haven't even experienced themselves yet. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, why? Why are you shitting on something that someone else loves for no reason? Like,
Especially when they're queer people. That's what gets me so much in one of like my friend groups, like predominantly bisexual people. Someone said that, oh, I heard it's just porn, so I'm not interested in it, especially because the book was written by a woman. Like they're dismissing it because
ugh,
it's an romance written by a woman. Therefore, they don't think that it's worth paying attention to, even though the show was made by a gay man. And like, I don't think that necessarily like being a woman eliminates you from the ability to write a compelling story. But
mhm.
that's beside the point. But for them, they said that I would rather platform media about the identities. Yeah, like if I'm going to consume an romance, I'd rather it was written by a gay man. Or if I was going to consume like a sapphic romance, I'd rather it was written by a sapphic
Which is
woman. But
fair. Like,
which is fair.
that's a fair take.
Yeah, but for me, that doesn't mean that you need to drag this particular piece of media
Exactly.
down, because you can advocate for more of all of those other things without dragging down a piece of media that was well made, that resonates with a lot of people, especially
Mhm.
since so many out queer people were involved in making this show. And many out queer people in the world are saying that it resonates with them, that it's important to them, that it felt real, and that they feel seen. There's that hockey player who was inspired to come out because of the show. There are former hockey
Mhm.
players who are saying that this is true to their experience. The actors have said that pro athletes have reached out to them in their DM saying that they're in the closet, but the show mirrors their reality. So, like, how can you be
Mhm.
dismissive of something that was put in the world that has made that kind of an impact? Like, maybe it's not for you. That's okay, but you don't have to put it down and dismiss its importance.
Yeah, I feel like what is so frustrating about this topic a lot is that people bring up things that I like don't disagree with. Like a common one is where's the sapphic version of this? And I'm like, you're right. There should be more.
Yeah.
There should be more sapphic content. Obviously, I would be pro that, but I don't think that it's appropriate or correct to bring it up as like a rebuttal to this content. Like it is a valid point that can stand on its own. There should be more sapphic media. There should be more like gay media propped up that's written by gay men. All of that is stuff that I agree with. There should
Yeah.
be more queer actors in queer roles. These are all things that I agree with.
Yeah,
Yes, obviously.
exactly.
But people always bring it up as like, almost like a gotcha or like
Yeah,
a
exactly. Criticism.
yeah, or like a criticism, and it's like those 2 things to me are separate conversations. The
Yep.
conversation
Exactly.
about Heated Rivalry being good is a separate conversation from we need more sapphic media. Like those aren't it's not the same to me. I don't
Yeah.
think that way because I want everything. If I had my way, everything would be gay. So I'm not gonna pick and choose about, oh, there should be more of this. I'm like, yeah, I agree, but also we have this and I'm extremely happy about it.
If anything, there is too much straight media. Like maybe we should attack
Exactly.
that.
We need to join forces and attack the real enemy. Why are we still making straight movies, for God's sake?
This kind of goes back to your other point, Katie, about how like just the queer community in general can be like our own worst enemy, where there's just for some reason this high standard that's put on all queer media that's being made, and we just have all this infighting for some reason instead of standing behind something that was really well made and a really beautiful story and appreciating that for what it is and then calling for more of it and calling for diversified versions
Yeah. What
of
happened
it.
to yes and?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we did talk about this a little bit, but like the straight women that have also been propping up this story, and in some ways in a good way, in some ways in not so good ways. But like I
Yeah.
think we do have to give them credit as well for the way this show has exploded. I think it probably wouldn't have gotten as big if it had just stayed in queer centric spaces. But the fact that there are a lot of straight women who are really appreciating this story as well and trying to prop it up as allies and as people who really enjoyed the content, I think has really been amazing to see. I think there's
Yeah.
also some very frustrating takes from straight
Yeah.
women, but I don't know if we want to get into all of
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I will
Yeah.
lose sleep over those straight women who didn't understand what was going on in that couch in Ilya's living room. I will lose sleep over it. What do you mean?
But in general, I am glad that you're here. I hope I
Yeah.
didn't sound dismissive earlier when I was talking about straight women. It's welcome. Some of them, this is
No.
the first queer media that they have like really engaged with and they love it.
Yeah.
And now they want to consume more. And, that's great, I think. So we are not gatekeeping this.
And I will say,
Right.
like, on the topic of, oh, it's just like straight women, what I also don't love about that is that at one point I thought that I was a straight woman who just liked consuming gay content.
Same. Yeah.
Right. Maybe this is going to awaken things in people. And I am here for that.
And now I'm like a bisexual, non-binary kind of person. This is such an amazing quote, and I'm so happy that Lucy Dacus was on Las Culturistas and said this because I think about this constantly now, which is that like sometimes the costume becomes the clothing. So it's
Yes.
that's why you
Oh my
shouldn't
God.
gatekeep because it's like sometimes people are wearing the costume before it becomes their clothing.
Yes.
Like sometimes
Right.
people are engaging in the culture before it becomes their culture.
Yeah.
And that's why I also don't love the conversation of like straight women, quote unquote.
Mhm.
And that's what makes all of this all the more complicated, which is that like we've said it before, but like sexuality is fluid.
Yes.
And some people don't figure it out right away. Like it takes some time.
It's not something that you're born with an innate knowledge of. You're not born with the knowledge that you're going to be this or that.
And it's engaging with the culture and other people that helps bring
Yes.
about those realizations.
Sometimes the costume becomes the clothing.
Exactly.
It's such a great phrase. I will
Yeah.
be so thankful to her for that for forever because I think that it is such like a beautiful and simple way of explaining that phenomenon. So thank you, Lucy Dacus. Anyways, let's do a full 180 and talk about hockey culture. This is the topic for me. I specifically wanted to talk about hockey because something that I've seen a lot of in fandom that has been like driving me a little crazy is that, I don't know, people seem to want to remove the show from the
hockey context.
Yes, from the hockey landscape because I saw a lot of that of being like, oh, it is a hockey show, but there's like almost no hockey in it, or the hockey doesn't really matter, or like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the hockey is the point. The book is a reflection of the homophobia and the toxic bro culture that exists in hockey. And Rachel Reed has even said herself that this book was born out of her personal frustrations with hockey culture and
Yeah.
her experiences with it because she has loved hockey her whole life. And I think she even played hockey, which I can't claim, but she says that she played hockey when she was younger and her experiences with that as like a woman or a girl playing hockey in a very rural part of Nova Scotia and like how and how she wanted to envision a world in which the changing of that like toxic culture was a possibility. I can't personally, again, this might be because of my experience growing up where I have and my experience with hockey. It's like, for me, it's very difficult to remove the story from hockey because it says so much. And what's the word I'm thinking of? It just like shows so much about both of the main characters and their stories. Like, their stories wouldn't be the same if they weren't in hockey. Like, the homophobia and the toxic culture that they're both so embroiled in is the reason for their entire story. And I guess like you could say that it could be set in like any sport, but it's not. And if it was set in
Not
another
really.
sport, it would be a different story.
Yeah, and also the NHL is the only major sports league that doesn't have and has never had any out players. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yes, all
Exactly.
sports are homophobic to some extent, but the
Mhm.
NHL is especially.
Specifically, yeah. And the dynamic with Canada is such a big part of the story.
Yeah.
And that is very tied in with hockey culture. Yeah,
Yeah.
this idea that we can somehow remove the context from the story and it'll be like, oh, it's just a romance. No, like the context is the story. Like exactly
Yeah.
what you said. Like without the hockey context, like their story would not be, it would not exist. Like they could just have their gay affair and they could just be together. Like it wouldn't be an issue. Obviously, there's homophobia in the real world and Ilya's still Russian and all that, but it
Mm.
would be a completely different story. And I think this is like a criticism that I've seen about a lot of different media or a take I've seen about a lot of different media. Like I'm not going to get started on this. I promise I will just say one sentence. But Karina and I have talked about this a lot where in the movie Red, White, and Royal Blue, they removed a lot of the political context. And I feel
And that
like
flattens the
not
story so much.
that did a disservice to the story that was actually in the book. So similarly, with the show, I feel like if you remove it from the hockey context, it would completely change the story.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you're removing the specificity of what makes these characters who they are. And the reason that it's a good love story and it's interesting to watch is because of that specificity, as we mentioned, like in the earlier in the podcast. Like
Mhm.
you can't just easily transpose that without changing so much about what makes the story good.
Mhm. And I also feel like I might be one of the only people who read the book and was like, there's not enough hockey in this.
No, Katie, I'm with you on that. I started watching hockey because I was like, there's not enough hockey in this. I need to watch hockey to make up for the lack of hockey content in this book.
Yeah, because I feel like some of the most interesting scenes in the book were the ones where they were playing hockey, specifically when they
All-Star
play
game.
hockey together at the All-Star game. Yes.
I
I was like,
know.
that was interesting to me, like extremely interesting, like the dynamic. Because I don't know, something I've seen some people say about, which I actually don't agree with at all. I don't understand this as a criticism, but I've seen some people be like, I don't really understand where their connection comes from or why they would even be like interested in each other. And I think that like that scene in particular where they are playing together, it just like shows that they have this innate connection with each other where it's like they can be so tuned in with each other that they can move seamlessly on the ice with each other and be very like in tune with each other in that situation. That says so much about like their connection and their relationship. And like
Yeah.
that's why I wanted more of that, because I was like, it's so delicious. I
Yeah, and
want-
the fact that the both of them are at the top of their
The
sport. and
best.
They
Yeah.
are the best. and
they're
they
the best.
admire that about each other so much. It's like the competence porn of it all. Watching the person that you're attracted to be so good at the thing that they do and knowing that they're the only one who can beat you. That's so sexy.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the thing, and they're the only one who can beat you, and they're the only one who can match you. And it's hockey is basically not the same. I think this even happened. Maybe it's in fic and not in the book. I don't remember. Not the canons are merging, but I feel like there's this implication that hockey would not be the same for either of them without the other person. It would almost be boring because there's no one else that can really match up with them. So I feel like that
Right.
context is exactly why their connection exists.
is literally in the show, right? Shane seeks Ilya out and goes to talk to him and says, "You're an awesome player to watch." Like, he was seeking out Ilya because he has a man crush on this guy who is so good and he enjoys watching him.
I do feel like we maybe had this discussion before the show became really popular, which was about like, oh, I wonder how the NHL is going to feel about this. But now that this show has become like unignorable.
Yeah, I think maybe that when it was a small Canadian show that was not going to reach this kind of critical mass, maybe the NHL could have ignored it, but now they can't. They literally can't. And now they want to capitalize on the success of Heated Rivalry. And this is problematic for a number of reasons.
Yeah, it is problematic for a number of reasons. And I think like their reaction so far has been a little lackluster.
Yeah.
I also feel like the creators agree with that. And I think that's a reasonable criticism because mainly so far they've been like receiving from the success of Heated Rivalry and haven't really been like giving anything. They've been like playing the music and they've been showing the clips at their games. And some of the teams have created jerseys that have Hollander and Rosanov on them.
It only makes sense that the Ottawa Centaurs, I call them the Ottawa Centaurs.
The Centaurs, the Senators.
Oh God, I keep confusing real teams with the fictional teams. Like, it only makes sense that Ottawa did that, but Seattle did it too. And I don't know. I don't think other teams that aren't really even mentioned in the show or the book, like trying to create like jerseys. It feels like a cash grab.
And there's been so much like social media from both major league and minor league kind of hockey teams that have just been like taking the memes from the show. Are you coming to the cottage? Or the like just random scenes from the show and dubbing over them. It's funny. It's cute. I'm glad that they're participating and making the show bigger. And it's like one of those moments where I'm like, this is crazy that the show has freaking broken containment into like normal mainstream life. I'm constantly like, what is happening? There is a part of it that feels a little icky because it's like maybe not these individuals who are participating specifically, but probably some of them were always making fun or maybe being homophobic a little bit or just like very dismissive of gay media or gay stories or anything like that. And now to just ride on the coattails of its success and try to get views and likes and clicks and for the NHL actual money and ticket sales.
Yeah, I have some interesting statistics on that. Since Heated Rivalry, NHL ticket searches have increased by 75%.
Wow.
There has been a 20% increase in ticket sales and 30% increase in revenue growth since the show aired.
I guess overall what we're trying to say is that like they have benefited from this show in a number of different ways, I would say. Increase in interest, merch, ticket sales, and like these very small, like surface level measures made to like recognize the popularity of the show. But there's been no real big changes. It's been like just over a month since the first episode came out. And like, I know that sometimes big things like this can take a while to actually happen, but I am wanting to know if there are going to be any big changes made within the NHL that would make it even remotely safer for LGBTQ fans or even just like women who want to participate in this culture, which has been mostly, I would say, geared towards men. It's like a complicated thing to me because as a kid who went to quite a few hockey games, it was always a little bit of a mixed bag. There were times that I felt a little uncomfortable around so many adult men, but there were other times that I felt so taken in. And this is like going to sound really sappy. I went to one game when I was quite young. That was actually the team that my mom supports playing the city that we lived in. And they are extremely big rivals. And we sat behind these two guys who were extremely drunk and were also big fans of the same team that my mom supported. And we were the only people in our entire like area who were supporting the same team. And they were so delightful and so nice to me. They picked me up and had me on their shoulders.
Oh my
They
gosh.
were like cheering with me and like high-fiving me and just being so genuinely kind and like nice to me as a very young child. It's just like a nice memory. And I wish that was like the general camaraderie. And I think that could be the camaraderie. Like that to me feels like something that I wish that everyone experienced at a hockey game, because I think that
Yeah.
the culture could be so inclusive, but it's
Mhm.
just not quite there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some videos online of people who have decided to go check out like an NHL game for the first time and have had really good experiences. And yeah, I just hope that it can continue to be like that. But I do feel like there needs to be some changes made within the league to really facilitate that.
There's going to be significant pushback because I'm already seeing online from like longtime hockey fans who are upset that there's a new demographic like moving into a space that they thought of as exclusively theirs. I literally saw a tweet that said something like, "What are the girlies, gays, and theys doing here?" in a
Mm.
hockey fan.
Making the space better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
You're seeing a lot of like things happening in hockey arenas during hockey games. Like the trailer is being played, they're playing the songs, people are celebrating and
Mhm.
having a good time. But then, like, also tomorrow, the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks are playing against each other, and it's a pride game. And the comments underneath that post on social media, there's so much homophobia and just like really awful comments. And so
Yeah.
that still exists alongside those joyful TikToks you're seeing of people
Mhm.
having a great inclusive time at hockey games, but the old school like gatekeeping homophobic culture is not going away. It's still there. And in some cases, like a lot of traditional fans are digging in their heels because now they feel like the sport is being gentrified by the girlies, gays, and theys, and they don't like it.
Some of it needs to come from the top, right? Like the NHL commissioner has commented now, like you said, Katie, like lacklusterly on Heated Rivalry. Like he made them joke about how he binged it in a day or something and he thought it was a really good show and everyone should watch it. But then if you just read a little bit further down in that same article, he said, no, we're not going to introduce Pride nights again.
Mandatory ones.
Similarly to how we don't allow like political statements at games or anything else, we don't want this to distract from our game because it should be about the game and all this political stuff distracts from hockey. So he's like trying to be on both sides. He's trying to say, oh, look at this show. We're so glad that it's bringing in new fans. And
At the same time, we don't want to commit to anything.
yeah, exactly. We don't actually want to make any change. Yeah, give us your money, but we're not going to
Yeah,
do
and
anything.
having pride nights is such a low bar. There's so much more that needs to change for it to actually be like an inclusive environment and be safe enough for someone to actually come out.
And forget Pride nights. Like the even lower bar is didn't they ban like the Pride hockey tape at one point and then they had to unban it because people got so upset.
It was like briefly banned and then brought back. And honestly, I have to say, I feel like pretty happy that my team has been very vocally supportive of
That's super
Pride
cool.
Night.
Yeah.
And my team captain has been pretty vocally supportive of Pride Night. I've seen now already people are talking about how some teams have canceled theirs.
Yes. The LA Kings, Utah Mammoth, Carolina Hurricanes, and the Boston Bruins recently said
Yeah.
that they're moving away from Pride nights. And that's wild to me, especially because the
LA
LA
Kings
Kings
one. I was going to say that one in particular is like
right,
crazy
because
to
they
me.
recently had Jacob Tierney and Brendan Brady at the game. They were promoting them all over
Yeah.
social media. They were wearing like the Rosanov and Hollander jerseys. And okay.
And also it's Los Angeles. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
And like the Bruins recently played I'll Believe in Anything during a Habs versus Bruins game.
yeah.
Okay. Like you're capitalizing on this.
You're literally in the show. Like,
And like the Hurricanes and the Bruins said that they're moving away from Pride Night and they're just doing a hockey is for everyone night, which feels like you're trying to be inclusive without committing support to any specific community. Like it just feels
Yeah, for sure.
very lackluster.
All lives matter. Okay, I guess if you're at least minimum having a hockey is for everyone night, okay, that means you're doing something. But come on, are we for real?
I also will say, I think that we'd be doing a disservice to criticizing the NHL if we didn't bring up that there are at all times multiple accusations of sexual assault against players in the league, that the NHL feels like part that they don't have to do anything about, and part that they're like actively protecting these players from these accusations. And they're much more concerned with the protection than they are with trying to create a culture that doesn't predicate this. And I don't know, you guys not having grown up in places where hockey is a big deal, you probably don't hear the conversations and the rumors that surround hockey bros at a high school and university or like college level, which is basically just that that's what you learn, is that they're basically just like asshole predators who can't really be trusted around women. That is just like the general vibe of hockey players at that level. And those are the types of people who are moving into the NHL.
I read a staggering statistic recently about how Hockey Canada has paid almost $9 million for sexual abuse settlements. That is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the podcast, where with those issues in the league, is it realistic and is it right to romanticize this idea of this perfect kind of hockey world, or not even perfect, but this world that kind of excludes that kind of narrative? For now, at least. It is a big, no spoilers, but I guess it is a big topic of conversation in one of the other of Rachel's books.
Yeah, and it's probably going to come up in season 2 because there is an overlap between that book. And I think that maybe we are going to see that in the show.
Yeah, so maybe it's an important conversation to have. And the fact that we are slightly romanticizing it in this kind of gentler storyline, as you said, Katie, but it's like, it's still at least being highlighted in some way, both the homophobia and this sexual assault, misogyny problem that hockey had.
Yeah. And I want to recognize that the NHL is a massive like institution that feels very reluctant to make big changes and have been that way for much longer than Heated Rivalry has been around. And so it's like hard to picture them making big changes because of the show. I would like to hope that they would, but it just feels very unrealistic.
Unlike you.
Yeah. But we did want to do a shout out to one of our favorite other podcasts that we think is a bright spot in the bro culture of hockey.
The only straight bros that I will tolerate.
Only straight bros that will tolerate, which is What Chaos. We love their podcast like so much. They've been really welcoming to not only people who just like Heated Rivalry, but also people who are interested in getting into hockey as a result of it. I mean, they've done extremely like good and well-intentioned and interesting breakdowns of each of the episodes.
They've interviewed Jacob twice and Rachel once, and those were really good interviews.
They were really good interviews. And also, not only that, but yeah, like I said, they've been really welcoming to people who are interested in getting into hockey. They've done some episodes that are like Hockey 101, like learning about the sport. And they've also done some episodes that are helping people get into the culture and like how to like choose like a team to root for or support. And I don't know, I really appreciate, like I said, it reminds me of those guys that were at that one game with me that were so kind. It's like, there are those pockets of people within hockey fandom, if you want to call it that. But I think that there's few and far between right now. And it would be nice if there was more of that.
Yeah.
It would be nice if there was more of it. And it would be nice if those people would speak louder. Because who knows? Maybe there are more of those voices than we think. And if they can become like a loud, welcoming presence and call for change, like maybe it's more likely that things could change.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the fact that there are women and queer people showing up in arenas, watching games, participating in hockey culture, eventually, like if that reaches some kind of critical mass, it will force some kind of shift. It's not going to happen overnight. But like maybe this show and this interest in it has maybe cracked the door open a little bit, and more people are going to step through that door and create a different kind of culture, force the culture to change. I'm not like idealistic about it happening anytime soon, but that is how culture changes, right? Like it does happen over time. And the more people that show up and are vocal and participate in the culture, that is how it changes.
Amen. We are both bisexual. That's so true.